I used to love night drives. There was something about the emptiness of the road, the hum of the tires, and the glow of distant headlights that made me feel at peace. I worked late shifts at a hospital back then, so I often found myself driving home through long stretches of rural highway in the middle of the night. Route 190 was my shortcut, a two-lane road that cut through miles of pine forest, hardly any traffic, barely any cell service, and definitely no streetlights. But I'd taken it dozens of times before. It was quiet, lonely, and for years perfectly safe, until that one night. It was a little past 2 a.m. when I clocked out. I was exhausted, running on coffee and adrenaline from a chaotic shift. I remember the rain had just stopped. The pavement was wet, shimmering under my headlights like black glass. I rolled the windows down slightly to get that fresh post-rain smell. Everything felt calm, peaceful. I didn't know that within an hour, I'd be begging for daylight and praying to never take that road again. About 15 minutes into the drive, I noticed something strange, a flicker of movement on the side of the road. It was so quick I thought I imagined it. Maybe an animal. This was deep forest territory. Deer and raccoons darted across the road all the time. I eased my foot off the gas just in case. The woods pressed in thick on either side. The darkness between the trees almost unnatural, like it swallowed light. The rain had stopped, but a low mist was rising from the ground, curling through the trees and spilling across the asphalt. I remember thinking it looked beautiful, like smoke from an unseen fire. A few miles later, I noticed the radio crackling. Static, faint at first. I tapped the dash and shrugged it off. Old car, bad signal, nothing unusual. But then the static cut in and out like someone was breathing through it. Long, uneven hisses that didn't match the rhythm of any radio interference I'd heard before. I turned it off. The silence that followed was thick, pressing in around me. Just the engine, the tires, and the faint patter of water dripping from the trees. That's when I saw the figure. It was standing on the shoulder of the road, just at the edge of my headlights. Tall, thin, motionless. I slowed down instinctively, squinting to make out details. For a moment I thought it was a person, maybe someone whose car had broken down. But the longer I stared, the more wrong it looked. It wasn't holding any kind of posture a normal person would. It was slightly hunched, limbs too long, head tilted at an unnatural angle. Its skin, or what I could see of it, looked pale gray, almost reflective in the light like wet concrete. I rolled my window up and locked the doors without even realizing I'd done it. The car crept closer, and I flicked my high beams on to get a better look. In that flash of light, I realized it wasn't facing the road. It was turned toward the trees, completely still, as if listening. Something deep inside me screamed to just keep driving. So I did. I sped up and didn't look back. But as I passed, I swear I saw its head move. Not a normal turn, more like a mechanical twist, too fast, too sharp, until its face, or what might have been its face, was pointed right at me. The rest of that drive should have taken 20 minutes. It felt like hours. I kept glancing at the rearview mirror, half expecting to see headlights or worse, that thing walking down the center of the road. But there was nothing, just the rain-slicked blacktop and the faint hum of my car. When I finally reached the old gas station that marked the end of Route 190, I pulled over and just sat there. My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't even grab my drink. I told myself I'd imagined it. Fatigue, stress, bad lighting. It had to be something explainable. I almost convinced myself too. Until the next night. I wasn't even supposed to work that evening, but one of my coworkers called in sick. I didn't want to take Route 190 again, but it was the fastest way to the hospital. I told myself I'd be fine. Lightning never strikes twice, right? By the time my shift ended, it was past midnight again. The rain had come back heavier this time, hammering the windshield so hard I could barely see. Wipers on full blast, I squinted at the road ahead, watching the lines disappear into a curtain of rain. The trees loomed closer than I remembered. The fog was thicker, too, dense enough to glow white under my headlights. I drove slower, focused, every muscle tight. Then the radio started hissing again, not static this time. It was whispering. I froze. The volume knob was turned all the way down, but I could still hear it. A faint, rhythmic whispering sound like a voice right at the edge of hearing. My throat went dry. I turned the radio off completely, but the whispering didn't stop. It grew louder, bleeding through the speakers like it was coming from inside the car. I could make out fragments of words. Stop. Here. Look. I slammed my fist against the dashboard, shouting, "Shut up!" The sound cut off instantly. Silence. Just the drumming of rain. I felt foolish for yelling at static. I was shaking, angry at myself, terrified and exhausted. I kept driving, gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. That's when I saw the headlights in my mirror. 2 white orbs, distant at first, then closing fast. Relief washed through me. Another car, thank God. Maybe a trucker, maybe someone else stupid enough to take this road tonight. I slowed a little to let them pass. But the lights didn't move. They stayed behind me, perfectly centered, never changing distance. I tapped my brakes. No reaction. I turned onto a small stretch where the road straightened, trying to get a better look, but the headlights were too bright to make out the car. Just 2 beams of light cutting through the fog. Then they flickered. Once, twice, then went out completely. My stomach dropped. There was no sound, no engine, no tires. Just blackness behind me. I hit the gas, heart pounding. My headlights wavered in the mist, the forest whipping by like a blur. Every second I expected to see those lights again, and then out of nowhere something slammed onto the roof of my car. I screamed, swerving into the other lane. The sound was heavy, like someone had dropped a sandbag on top of me. Metal groaned under the impact. I could hear dragging, something sliding across the roof toward the windshield. I ducked, barely keeping control, my breath ragged. A face appeared on the glass, pale, distorted, pressed flat against the rain-slick windshield. Its mouth hung open in a silent scream, eyes wide and milky. The skin looked stretched too tight, like wax melting under heat. I don't remember deciding to do it, I just slammed the brakes. The body, or whatever it was, flew forward and disappeared into the road ahead. I didn't stop to check. I floored it. The car fishtailed on the wet pavement, but I didn't care. I kept driving until I saw lights. Real ones this time, yellow and steady from a diner at the highway junction. I pulled in, shaking uncontrollably. The man behind the counter must have seen my face because he didn't say a word. Just poured me coffee and asked quietly, "You come from 190? I nodded. He sighed and leaned against the counter. "You're not the first." I asked him what he meant, but he just shook his head. "That road ain't right. Cops say there's been more than a dozen crashes there. Folks go missing. They find cars empty, doors open, engines running. No bodies, no tracks, just gone." I wanted to tell him what I saw, but I couldn't form the words. It sounded insane even to me. I just sat there staring at the dark windows, half expecting to see that pale face pressed against the glass again. I stopped taking Route 190 after that. I'd drive an extra hour if I had to. Anything to avoid that stretch of highway. But a few weeks later, curiosity got the better of me. I looked it up online, Route 190, accidents, disappearances, anything. And I found something that made my blood run cold. Back in 1997, there was a massive pileup on that road. A fog so thick drivers couldn't see 5 feet ahead. 12 vehicles involved, 7 fatalities. The report said that when the first responders arrived, they found 1 car with every window smashed from the inside. The driver was missing. But on the road next to it, written in the mud, were 3 words. "Still out here?" Since that night, I've never driven alone after midnight. Even when I'm with friends, I avoid looking too long in the mirrors. Sometimes, if it's raining and the fog gets thick enough, I swear I can hear whispering through the static on the radio. I change the station immediately, because I know what happens if you listen too long, and I know that somewhere along Route 190, it's still waiting for someone else to stop and look. There are moments that stick with you forever, moments that seem small and ordinary when they start, but slowly twist into something you wish you could forget. For me, that moment began on an empty stretch of highway just outside of Elko, Nevada. I was driving cross-country to visit my sister in California, somewhere around the middle of the desert, where there's nothing but darkness and the endless hum of the tires beneath you. I'd been on the road for nearly 10 hours, and the caffeine had stopped doing its job about 3 hours back. I should have stopped at the last motel I saw, but the thought of saving another night's money sounded good at the time. I figured I'd push through another couple of hours, maybe stop at a gas station, grab an energy drink, keep going until sunrise. Bad idea. I had no idea that stretch of desert had a reputation. I didn't know about the stories truckers whispered on the CB about the ghost hitchhiker on Route 50. I didn't know that when you see someone alone in the desert, it's not always someone. It must have been close to 1 a.m. The moon was bright, the sky clear, stars scattered across it like salt. My high beams cut through the sand-colored haze that hung low over the asphalt. The road felt endless. No cars, no towns, just that lonely ribbon of black cutting through miles of silence. I had the radio low, playing some old rock station that was fading in and out. The signal would drop for a few seconds, then come back with a burst of static. I didn't even mind it. It kept me from falling asleep. Then I saw her. At first, I thought my tired eyes were playing tricks on me. A figure standing at the edge of the road just outside my high beams. I slowed down instinctively, squinting. It was definitely a person, a woman, wearing a light-colored dress that fluttered slightly in the breeze. She was standing perfectly, still, facing away from the road, her hair long and tangled. I couldn't see her face. There wasn't another car for miles, no town or gas station anywhere near here. My first thought was that she must have broken down or gotten stranded. My gut said not to stop, but something in me, maybe guilt, made me slow down. I pulled over a few feet ahead of her, rolled the window down halfway, and leaned toward the passenger side. "Hey," I called out. "You need help?" She didn't move. The air was dead quiet except for the ticking of my engine cooling. I waited another moment, feeling the hairs on my neck start to rise. Then slowly she turned toward me. I'll never forget that motion. It wasn't a normal turn, it was like her head turned first, then her body followed, as if it had to remember how to move. Her face came into view under the pale wash of moonlight. She was young, maybe early 20s, but something was off about her eyes. They looked too dark, too deep, like they didn't catch light at all. I felt a chill crawl down my spine. "Are you okay?" I asked again. This time she nodded. Just one slow nod. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed to leave, but before I could drive away, she took a step closer to the car. Then another. She moved strangely, smooth, deliberate, her feet barely making a sound on the asphalt. When she reached the door, she leaned down slightly and peered through the window. Her face was blank, expressionless, but her lips moved. I couldn't hear her at first over the idling engine. I leaned in, against my better judgment. "Can you give me a ride?" she whispered. Her voice was thin and dry, like someone who hadn't spoken in a long time. Against every ounce of reason I had left, I nodded. Something about her made me feel sorry. She looked lost, broken even. Maybe she'd been walking for hours. Maybe she needed help. I unlocked the door. She climbed in without a word. The smell hit me immediately. Not rot exactly, but something old and damp like wet soil after rain. She didn't say anything, just sat rigid, staring straight ahead. I noticed she wasn't wearing shoes. Her feet were bare, dusty, streaked with what looked like dirt. Her dress was old-fashioned too, something you'd see in an old photo from the 60s. I tried to keep things normal. "So, where you headed?" I asked. She turned her head slightly toward me. "Home," she said softly. "Where's that?" "Up ahead," she murmured, pointing vaguely down the highway. That wasn't helpful, but I didn't argue. I drove, keeping my eyes on the road. The silence between us grew heavier with every mile. I could feel her watching me sometimes, her head turning just slightly, enough that I could sense her gaze even without looking. After about 10 minutes, I realized something strange. The temperature inside the car had dropped. My breath fogged faintly in the air. I turned off the AC, but it made no difference. I tried the radio again just to fill the silence. Static. No music, no signal, just the faint hiss of white noise. Then, buried in it, I heard something else. A whisper. At first I thought it was feedback, but it was too distinct. It was a voice. A woman's voice, whispering softly, too fast to make out. I turned to glance at her. She was still staring straight ahead, hands folded neatly in her lap, as still as a statue. But her lips were moving. I turned the volume down and the whispering didn't stop. "Are you saying something?" I asked. She turned to me with those dark eyes and smiled, a slow, unnatural stretch of lips. "You shouldn't be on this road," she said. That's when the engine sputtered. The dashboard lights flickered. The radio cut out completely, and the car started losing speed. I pressed the gas, but the pedal felt like dead weight. "What the hell?" I muttered, slamming it again. The car rolled to a stop. I turned the key. Nothing. Not even the click of the starter. We were in the middle of nowhere. No lights, no signs, just desert and silence. I felt a bead of sweat slide down my neck despite the cold. "Must be the battery," I said out loud, more to myself than her. "Hold on, I'll check." I got out, the night air hitting me like ice. The desert was completely silent, not even the buzz of insects. I popped the hood, but the engine looked fine. No smoke, no smell. I leaned in closer, squinting in the dark, when I heard the passenger door creak open behind me. I turned around fast, but she wasn't getting out. She was just standing halfway in the doorway, staring at me over the roof of the car. Her hair hung over her face, but I could see her mouth moving again. "You shouldn't have stopped," she said. Her voice was lower this time, deeper. "Listen," I said, my nerves fraying. "If this is some kind of joke, it's not funny. You need to tell me what's going on." She tilted her head. "You invited me in," she whispered. A jolt of cold ran through me so hard I almost dropped the hood. Invited her in? What the hell did that mean? I started backing toward the driver's side, but she stepped fully out of the car now, bare feet touching the asphalt. The moonlight hit her face, and I realized what was wrong with her eyes. They weren't dark, they were hollow, empty sockets, shadows swirling inside. I bolted for the driver's side. Slamming the door shut and locking it, I jammed the key into the ignition and turned. The car roared back to life immediately. My heart nearly exploded from relief. I looked up, expecting to see her still standing there, but she was gone. I didn't think. I hit the gas and tore down the road as fast as the car would go. I kept glancing in the mirrors, half expecting her to be running behind me, but the road stayed empty, stretching out endlessly under the pale moon. After a few minutes, I started to think maybe I imagined it. Maybe exhaustion had made me hallucinate. I even started laughing, this weird, shaky laugh that sounded almost hysterical. Then I heard it, a soft, rhythmic sound from the back seat, like breathing. I froze. My eyes darted to the rearview mirror. She was sitting there, in the back seat. Her hands rested neatly in her lap, her head tilted slightly to the side. Those hollow sockets fixed on me. I screamed and swerved off the road, gravel flying everywhere as I slammed the brakes. The car skidded to a stop. I turned, panting, and the back seat was empty. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. I got out, stumbling onto the side of the road, scanning the desert around me. Nothing, just wind and silence. I ran around to the back seat, yanked open the door, empty. I stood there, shaking, trying to make sense of anything. Maybe I'd fallen asleep. Maybe I'd dreamed it. That's when I noticed the smell again. Damp, earthy. It was stronger now. I leaned in and saw something smeared on the backseat fabric. Mud, and written in it, 3 words. "See you soon." That broke me. I got in, slammed the door, and drove like a maniac until I reached a gas station about 30 miles away. The attendant took one look at me and asked if I was okay. I told him I'd picked up a hitchhiker and the car broke down. His face went pale. "Don't ever pick up anyone out here," he said quietly. "Not at night." I pressed him for more, but he just shook his head. "People see her sometimes. A woman in a white dress. Been that way for years. My dad used to drive trucks. Said she was hit by a car out here back in the 70s. Killed instantly. Driver didn't stop. Folks say she still tries to get home. I didn't tell him about the mud. I didn't tell him she knew my name because, see, that's the part I didn't mention yet. When I first slowed down to pick her up, right before she turned toward the car, I could have sworn I heard her say something. It was faint. So quiet I thought I imagined it. But now, every time I replay that moment, I hear it clearly. She said, "Stop for me, Daniel." She knew my name before I ever opened the door, and I can still hear her sometimes, whispering through the static when I drive alone at night. Always the same voice, the same hollow tone. Up ahead. I used to work as a long-haul driver for a logistics company, the kind of job where you live behind the wheel and measure your life by the mile markers you pass. I liked the solitude, the freedom of endless highways and the rhythm of the road stretching out forever. But after what happened near mile marker 313, I can't drive at night anymore. I can't even look at an empty stretch of highway without feeling that deep, crawling terror under my skin, the kind that makes you grip the steering wheel until your fingers go numb. I've seen wrecks, storms, drunks, and all kinds of human insanity out there. But nothing, not one thing, comes close to what I saw that night on Interstate 84. It was early November. About 3 a.m. I'd been hauling a load of appliances from Portland to Boise. Long, lonely drive, but I had coffee, an audiobook, and enough nicotine gum to keep me awake. The night was cold, dry, stars sharp and clear above the desert. My headlights stretched far ahead, painting the asphalt in pale gold. The road was completely empty. No taillights, no oncoming beams, just me and the hum of the engine. I remember thinking how beautiful it was in a bleak kind of way. Just desert, sagebrush, and silence. Then I passed mile marker 310. About 3 miles later, I saw something on the shoulder. At first, I thought it was a deer. Big, pale shape hunched low to the ground. I slowed down a bit out of instinct, eyes scanning the dark. As I got closer, I realized it wasn't an animal, it was a car. An old sedan, silver or gray, pulled halfway into the ditch. Its hazard lights blinked weakly, but something was strange. The front end was crushed inward. The windshield shattered, but there were no skid marks on the road. No sign it had swerved or braked, just stopped there. I pulled over. I always stopped for accidents. It's a rule among truckers, you help if you can. I grabbed my flashlight, climbed down from the cab, and walked toward the wreck. The air was cold enough that my breath came out in pale clouds. The closer I got, the weirder it felt. The car door was open, swinging slightly in the wind. There was blood on the driver's seat, dark, smeared, but no one inside. The airbags had deployed, the radio was still faintly humming static, and the key was still in the ignition. But the part that really messed with me was the smell. It wasn't blood or gasoline, it was sweet, almost metallic like rusted sugar. I called out, "Hello? Anyone there?" Silence. I circled the car, scanning with my flashlight. The back seat was empty. No sign of footprints leading away, just disturbed gravel where the tires had slid into the ditch. I should have called it in right then, but my CB radio had been cutting out for hours. No signal. No cell service either. I decided to check a little farther down the shoulder, just in case the driver had wandered off for help. I grabbed my jacket and started walking along the edge of the highway. That's when I saw her. At first, she looked like a trick of the light, a faint figure standing just beyond the reach of my flashlight. A woman, maybe mid-30s, wearing a dark coat. Her head was bowed, her arms hanging limply at her sides. I called out again, "Hey, are you okay? Were you in that car?" She didn't move. I walked closer, maybe 15, 20 feet away. My boots crunched against the gravel, the only sound in the vast empty night. When my light finally hit her face, I froze. Her skin was pale, almost gray under the beam, and her eyes, God, her eyes were open but not focused, like she wasn't really seeing me. There was a long gash running across her cheek, dried blood down her neck, but no fresh wounds. She looked dry, like she'd been out here for days. "Ma'am, I'm going to call for help," I said, voice trembling. She tilted her head slightly, like she was hearing something I couldn't, then she said, in a low, rasping voice, "He's still out here." That stopped me cold. "Who?" I asked. She turned slowly and pointed down the highway toward mile marker 313. Her arm didn't shake. Her hand was stiff, fingers bent at odd angles. I followed the direction she pointed, sweeping my light along the road, but there was nothing there. When I turned back to ask what she meant, she was gone. I swear to you, she didn't walk away. She didn't run. She just wasn't there anymore. I stood frozen, heart hammering, trying to make sense of what I'd just seen. Maybe I was overtired. Maybe I imagined her. I turned back toward my rig, and that's when I saw movement in the ditch. Something was crawling out of the crushed car. I froze, my flashlight trembling in my grip. A hand emerged first, long, thin, with skin too pale, too smooth. Then a face followed, but not like a person standing up. It was dragging itself out, moving low to the ground like a wounded animal, except its limbs bent the wrong way. The sound it made was wet, breathy, like someone breathing through water. I ran. I didn't even think. I sprinted for the truck, boots slipping on gravel. I could hear it behind me now, scraping, dragging. I hit the steps of my cab and threw myself inside, slamming the door and locking it in one motion. My breath came in ragged bursts. I fumbled with the keys, hands shaking so bad I dropped them twice before the engine roared to life. I threw it into gear, floored it, and didn't look back. But as I pulled onto the highway, my headlights caught the ditch one last time. Something was standing there. Tall. Too tall. The same shape I'd seen crawling, now upright, its head bent low, arms hanging almost to its knees. I couldn't see its face clearly, but I swear I saw a grin, wide, wrong, stretching too far. It raised one arm and waved. I drove all night without stopping. By the time I reached Boise, the sun was rising. My hands still wouldn't stop shaking. I parked at the depot, stumbled out, and told the dispatcher what happened. He looked at me like I was insane, said there'd been no accident reports on that stretch of highway, no cars matching that description. I insisted, begged him to check. Finally, he radioed the state police. They sent a patrol to mile marker 313. A few hours later, I got a call. They found the car exactly where I said it would be, but it wasn't recent. It had been there for 8 years. The officer said it belonged to a woman named Lori Jameson, who went missing in 2016 after veering off the highway during a storm. The case was cold. They found bones in the driver's seat, long since picked clean by the desert, no sign of anyone else. I didn't tell them what I saw crawling out of the wreck. I didn't tell them about the woman who spoke to me before vanishing. I didn't tell them about the grin. But that night, when I finally lay down in the sleeper cabin, something strange happened. I woke around 3 a.m. to the sound of tapping. Light, rhythmic, coming from the passenger side window. I froze, listening. Tap, tap, tap. I reached for the flashlight, but the tapping stopped. I forced myself to sit up, heart pounding, and looked out the window. Nothing but darkness and the faint outline of the truck stop lights. I was just starting to settle back down when I heard it again, this time on the driver's side, tap, tap, tap. I whipped around, shining the light, and nearly screamed. There was a hand pressed against the glass, pale, thin, nails black with dirt. I scrambled back, fumbling for the door handle. The hand slid upward, leaving a faint smear of something dark behind it. Then I heard the voice, low and raspy, right against the window. Still out here. I slammed the truck into gear and tore out of that lot so fast I nearly took out a gas pump. I drove for hours until daylight broke. When I finally stopped, the handprint was gone, but the smear wasn't. It looked like dried blood. I told myself it was some kind of prank, maybe a hallucination, maybe the stress of the road catching up to me. But a few days later, I was on another run through eastern Oregon, different route, and as I passed a small diner off the highway, I saw a police cruiser parked out front. Curiosity got the better of me. I went in for coffee, hoping maybe I'd find someone who knew about the wreck. An older officer sat at the counter nursing his cup. I asked casually if he'd ever heard of an accident near mile marker 313. His eyes flicked up to mine and he went quiet. After a moment, he said, "You seen it?" I hesitated. "What do you mean?" He sighed. "You're not the first. Every few years, someone comes through talking about a wreck that shouldn't be there. Folks see a woman, sometimes hear her talk. Others, they see something else, something that ain't her. What is it?" I asked, almost whispering. He looked at me for a long time before answering. "I don't know, but whatever's out there, it ain't human. We found tire tracks from your rig that night. We followed them. Ended about half a mile from where the car was. You must have stopped, got out, looked around. Thing is," he paused, "there were footprints beside your truck. Big ones, bare feet, leading away from your door." He drained his cup, stood and said quietly, "If you know what's good for you, son, don't ever stop between 310 and 314. And if you see hazard lights out there, keep driving." That was 5 years ago. I quit long-haul trucking the next month, sold my rig, moved into town, started doing warehouse work instead. But even now, every so often, I'll be driving home late and I'll see a pair of blinking hazard lights in the distance. My stomach twists and I take the next exit every time. But the part that really gets me is this. Sometimes when I pass by a parked car at night, I can see my reflection in the window. And once, just once, I swear I saw her reflection next to mine. The pale woman with the hollow eyes smiling faintly. That was last winter. I was sitting in my pickup outside a grocery store, Snow falling softly, engine idling. The radio cut out suddenly, just static. And through the static, a faint voice whispered, "He's still out here."